Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio, so today we need to take a look at some Pokemon TCG cards that are spiking in price. I've grouped them into little categories this time, because I don't know, that seemed like a more fun way to do it. And category number one is going to be a few select cards from Twilight Masquerade that are jumping up. Sound like a plan? Excellent. Starting with Greninja. Greninja makes no real sense to me. It started off as 155-ish. It's gone down as low as like 120, and it's currently like the market price on TCG players showing at 240, but all the recent tolls are like 265, 270. So, honestly, it's not a 240 card right now. It's a 270-ish card. Maybe 265 if you want to be generous. This is a very expensive card. Right now, this is the number one card in the Scarlet and Violet era. It's jumped up massively, keeps going up. And I'm not entirely sure why. Now, don't get me wrong. Now, it's a case of it's got momentum and it's keeping it. It has been pushed up, and now people are essentially buying it before it keeps going up, which ironically means that it will keep going up, and we're pushing it up like that. But initially, look, the art is cool, but if you compare it to the big card from the Sword and Shield era, the Moonbryon, do we really think it's as good as the Moonbryon? And Greninja's popular, but do we really think Greninja is more popular than Umbreon? I just think there is a lot going on here, which is a case of I don't know why it's jumped up quite so high. I think there are reasons why it should be high, the artwork, the fact that it's Greninja, etc. But it's not that playable, and the art is good, but it's not that level of good. And then we're left with, well, hang on a second, how did this happen? And the answer is, this happens sometimes. And there isn't really a good explanation. The answer essentially is that people decide that it's a big card, and then we keep pushing it up. And that's the answer, and it's not the most satisfying answer, but unfortunately, that is essentially what happens. Now, Twilight Masquerade as a whole, to be clear, is not jumping up in price. Told you the other day it wasn't going to jump up in price like that. But some of the high-level singles are, as we do sometimes see a month or two after the set releases. Another one that's happening here is Eevee. Now, this is another one where the market price on TCG Player right now is showing at like $65 after a pretty big jump. But the last two solds are $180. $100 and $80. There is a $20 sold there. That's a Japanese version. And I've made this point before, but I'm going to make it again right now. If the Japanese version is $20, in what world should the English version be $80 to $100? No. That's just weird to me. Don't get me wrong, it should be one of the more expensive illustration rares, but proportionally and compared to the other illustration rares and other cards in the set, it has been blown massively out of proportion. It is way higher than it should be. Like we just said with Greninja, I don't think this card really should be this high, but it is. And all the signs we've got at the moment are that it is continuing to jump up. It doesn't look like it's jumped, but it's all right. It's on the way down now. Nah, mate. This is a card that keeps jumping up. And one more we need to mention is Kieran. Now, this is a lot more modest, but I find this very interesting. Kieran started life at about a $45 card. Not hideously expensive, but respectable in the Scarlet and Violet era for a special illustration rare supporter. That is honestly pretty high in Scarlet and Violet. We got maybe the cheapest block we've ever had at this point. Prices are not jumping up like they used to, so $45 was fine. And then it dropped down to like $32, which again makes sense, because that's generally what happens upon the release of a set. The cards start dropping down in price. This all makes perfect sense. And then it starts jumping up again. And this is where it gets a bit weird to me. And I think this is such a modest rise that we don't need to worry too much. This isn't like Greninja or Eevee, where the jump is just weird and makes no sense, right? It's gone up from like $32 to $42. Although why a lightly played sold for 45 and a near mint on the same day sold for 42, I'm not entirely sure. But this is a case of, it's a cool looking card, and it's not got Pikachu, but it's got someone in a Pikachu mask, which is kind of similar. The artwork is lovely. I'm a big fan of the artist T0. I think they're brilliant. And it is a playable card. Kieran is a decent card that gives you a choice between either doing an extra 30 to EXs and Vs or switching. It sees play. Cool card. That makes perfect sense. The second category of cards that are jumping up we need to be looking at here, and there's only really a couple of them, but they do bear having a look at, are high-level cards from Paldean Fates, starting off with Charizard. And one thing to remember here, if this doesn't sound a little bit obvious, it is a Charizard. So 3 months ago it was sitting there at a $110 card, got down as low as 100, it's now up to about 120. Is this jumping up massively? No, it's not jumping up massively. But outside of Greninja, cards generally don't get this high in the Scarlet and Violet block. Like $120 is honestly high for basically anything nowadays. And the fact that it is sticking there and creeping up, no, it's not a massive spike like we saw from Greninja and Eevee, and I'm not saying it is. But I am saying that the fact that any card can stay this high in the Scarlet and Violet era is kind of impressive. Like, it's a reprint, an alternate art reprint of the one from Obsidian Flames, and that's like a $40 card, maybe $50 at most right now. So the fact that it's at this level and is really creeping up rather than crashing down, it's not a huge price jump, but it is still very relevant that this is happening. The other one that is keeping its value very nicely from Paldean Fates is Mew. Which actually makes me a little bit sad, honestly, because I love this Mew. This Mew makes me happy. And again, it's worth pointing out that it's essentially gone from like an $80 card to an $85, $90 card. It's been a fairly modest rise, but my argument here is the same argument I just made for Charizard. No, it hasn't jumped up in price massively like that, but it absolutely has kept its value in a situation where, generally speaking, cards don't. The vast, vast majority of cards end up dropping in price fairly significantly. So the fact that any card is holding its value, and again, this is not going down, this is creeping up. It's not holding, it is going up. That is honestly very, very relevant. Now, before we get to our final category here, a quick interlude for Hisuian Sneasler V from Astral Radiance. This is a card I have very much got my eye on, because 3 months ago it was sitting there as like a $20 card, and it's now rocking up to a $30 card. This is an older card, which isn't playable, which was never really that popular. To see it jumping up over 50% in the space of, it's not really 3 months, it's really about 2, that is very impressive. Now, luckily I have this card in English and in Japanese, so I don't need this anymore. I'm fine with it jumping up in price, but I do find it very interesting that this, for some reason, has suddenly started jumping up in price. There's no real reason I can see for it. I love the artwork because it's Okacheke, my favourite artist, and it is phenomenal artwork, but Hisuian Sneasler V is one of the worst Pokemon. It creeps me out. But the art is absolutely stunning, maybe that's your explanation. If we flick to the 6-month graph quickly, we can see quite how stark it was, because not only has it seen a big jump, but it was so steady for so long, and then jumped up. Which is even more interesting. The fact that it's jumped up like it has is quite relevant. The fact that it's jumped up like it has after being so stable for so long really is very interesting indeed. Now, the final category we've got here is Special Illustration Rares from 151, starting off with Charizard. With an apology to Blastoise. Blastoise isn't jumping up. I'm showing you what's happening. I'm showing you the list. I'm giving you all the information. And the answer is really quite simple. Blastoise ain't jumping up. Charizard is, though. Charizard is jumping up very nicely indeed. What we've got here is 3 months ago it's sitting at $100. It's now sitting up at... Well, here's the thing. It says $120, but the last couple souls are all around $105. But then before that, there were a bunch of sales that were around about $130. So it is about $120, $130 card right now. Again, my analysis of this really goes very similarly to my analysis of the other Charizard. It is a card which isn't necessarily jumping up in price like that, but it's a card that's holding over $100 and creeping up in the Scarlet and Violet era. That alone is pretty gosh darned relevant. Just like the Venusaur, it has jumped from about $37 to about $45. Is that a gigantic jump? Well, it depends. Like, as a raw number, no, it's gone up by like $8. As a percentage, it's gone up by over 20%. That, I think, is much more relevant. I don't know whether it's because people were sleeping on Venusaur. Venusaur was not getting all the love for a long time in 151. So maybe it's just a case of people were sleeping on Venusaur, and now people are coming around and going, hang on a second, maybe Venusaur is better than we gave it credit for. And that genuinely could just be the reason here. It could just be a case of everyone slept on Venusaur, and now collectors have turned around and decided, well, hang on a second, it's still a special illustration rare of a first partner Pokemon from Gen 1, from a really hyped set. Maybe that alone is enough. And finally, also from 151, we've got Zapdos. And you notice Zapdos' graph looks a lot like Venusaur's. And basically here we've gone from about $32 up to about $40. Again, in terms of raw numbers, that's about an $8 jump. But in terms of percentages, that's about a 25% jump. And a 25% jump in price in about 3 months is honestly pretty relevant. But again, it's Zapdos. Now, the art on Zapdos, I don't think anyone ever really slept on that. The art on Zapdos is amazing, but it's a special illustration rare of a popular Gen 1 Pokemon. The artwork is absolutely stunning and also has the other Gen 1 birds on. And I think this is another one which is just going to keep climbing. So there we go. Some of these have taken gigantic jumps. Some of these are creeping up nicely. Some of these are surprising us. And I think some of them we maybe saw coming. But for now, it's over to you guys. Which of these cards have you pulled? Which of these cards do you want? Which of these have you got a good deal on? Go nuts in the comment section, but be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord, and all kinds of fun things. And get shoutouts on the channel, like the lovely Uncle Poker Peter, who's been a supporter of ours for a while now, and seems to be a very lovely person. So shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.